Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. I cannot believe we are halfway through the week already and that it is almost August. That is insane to me. Welcome to our live discussion. I'm Liz O'Donnell, the Director of Education for Push for Empowered Pregnancy. We are a leading stillbirth prevention organization doing all that we can to make sure that mothers and babies make it home safe together. And I am so happy to have Dr. Emily Guarnotta visiting us today. We are going to be chatting about managing anxiety during pregnancy after loss. We get asked a lot about little tips and tricks for how to manage anxiety during a pregnancy after loss. It's a tough topic to find information about, which is why conversations like this are so key in making sure that during a pregnancy after loss, not only are we physically being taken care of, but our mental health is also being taken care of. So Emily, I am just so happy that you are here. Go ahead, take a second to introduce yourself so that our audience can get to know you and just kind of understand why you chose this field and your knowledge on the loss community.
Yeah, thank you so much, Liz. It's great to see you this morning. It's actually Thursday, not Wednesday. I didn't want to throw anyone else off. It's just one of those weeks.
And even before, when we were just talking, I'm pretty sure I said Wednesday. So you know what?
It's one of those weeks.
That's why I have this. And clearly, I didn't have enough of it yet. So take it away. I'm just going to zip it now.
Well, I'm really grateful to be here. My name's Emily. I'm a psychologist and a certified perinatal mental health provider. I'm the owner of Phoenix Health. We're an online mental health practice that supports parents and families wherever they are at in their family building journey, whether they're dealing with infertility, loss, multiple losses, they're postpartum. We support them at all of those stages. And I really came into this work after actually experiencing postpartum depression myself several years ago. It really opened my eyes and it led me to want to learn more about working with families and supporting them. And when I started doing this work, I think one of the most surprising things for me was how complex the family building journey is and how so many of us have multiple issues, for lack of a better word, as we're building our families. It's very rare. I was saying this earlier, that it's very rare that a client comes to me that just has one issue related to family building. Often it's infertility, and plus it's loss, plus it's postpartum anxiety. And I just think it's so important to be able to talk about this. And I'm just so grateful to be able to be with you and be with your audience.
Well, I'm so happy when you had initially emailed Push, just reading about, about Phoenix Health and the work that you're doing to support families. I just knew we would be a perfect fit. So again, thank you for being here. And I'm just going to jump right in. Full disclosure, I have not gone through a pregnancy after loss yet. This is something that my partner and I think about, talk about, avoid talking about pretty much daily. And so what I am most nervous for in walking that path is actually the mental health component. I feel like, when you see that positive pregnancy test after a loss, your first emotion is not what it was the very first time you got pregnant and you saw that test, right? It's, oh my gosh, is my loss going to happen again? How do I tell people? And so do you have any advice for, very early on in your pregnancy after loss journey, when you're just finding out that you're pregnant again and you feel conflicted about it? I feel like a lot of people can question themselves. Why am I not happy? I should be happy. But then they're balancing it with, well, let's think about what happened last time. And so the anxiety that comes with that, what are your suggestions for how people can manage that when it happens?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to normalize it. It is so common for that initial reaction when you find out that you're pregnant after experiencing a loss to be a mix of joy and anxiety and fear and maybe even anger or panic, like just so many complex emotions that hit you at one time. And unfortunately, it's very common for those emotions to continue to come as waves. Especially as you're approaching each milestone, like that first, trip to the provider to get that confirmation, the first ultrasound, the second ultrasound, the 12-week, like all of these milestones have so much anxiety tied up in them. It's really tricky because I always tell my clients that anxiety tells us something. Like, it's there for a reason. It's giving us information. So we don't necessarily want to get rid of it entirely, even though maybe like we would prefer for it to not be there, but it is valuable information. And often when it comes to anxiety when you're pregnant after loss, it's that information is like your body, your brain wants to keep you on your toes. It wants to make sure that it can do everything in its power to make sure that you don't go through this again, that your baby doesn't go through this again. And of course, you can't control that, right? But like our brains want to think that we have more control than we often do in situations like this. So I really encourage the people that I work with to start doing some coping strategies to regulate their nervous system, because your nervous system, your body is going into fight or flight. So things like a couple of minutes of just deep breathing or mindfulness. It can sound very silly or very like Pollyanna-ish, but those types of things really do help regulate your nervous system.
Regulate, yes.
Yeah. So you're not telling yourself like, let's be positive. Let's, that's very Pollyannish and doesn't feel right or true to you. But just these activities that can help calm down that nervous system a little bit better. So you can take that deep breath. You can think through your emotions. You can sit with your emotions. Again, the goal isn't to get rid of them entirely, but to be able to sit with them and not have them kind of rapid firing in your brain.
Yeah. And I'm so happy that you're saying to just sit with them and accept them. I think, and I can admit right after my loss, I did a lot of ignoring and that in the moment can feel okay, but certainly builds up over time. And so I think it's really important, for people to know, do not just push those feelings to the side, right? Because I would imagine it would do more harm than good later on. And so thank you for sharing that, to just really sit with those feelings and allow them to come. You stated in the beginning, the joy, maybe panic, being scared, all of that is normal. So thank you for setting the tone in normalizing that. I think, once the individual and their partner, if applicable, kind of accepts it, the next step is eventually having to tell people that you're pregnant again, right? And not everybody understands the complexity of emotions, the range of emotions that occur in a pregnancy after loss. And I can imagine that a lot of responses from friends and family, while well-meaning, are joy and, oh my gosh, yay, this is, you're going to have a baby this time around, or, lightning doesn't strike more than once, so everything is going to be fine. And just everybody's all happy. How can someone manage that? Do they just listen to it and keep it moving? Should they say something like, well, this is actually how I'm feeling? How can you create a healthy boundary with that? Because we know with friends and family, especially family, it can be hard sometimes. So how would you suggest someone goes about that?
Yeah, I think it can feel very lonely when you're the only person. You feel like you're the only one that's holding all these feelings while everyone else around you is really excited and joyful. So you can definitely feel very alone in that. I think it's very individualized. Every person is going to want to handle it differently. And then you're going to want to handle things differently with maybe different family members or different friends. You have kind of a different dynamic with different people in your life, where some of them you might feel safe opening up about those more complicated emotions that you feel. And with someone else, like the barista at Starbucks, you might not feel like it's necessary to kind of get into that. And that's okay too. I just encourage people. I think there's so much self-doubt when you have experienced loss, that just to listen to what feels right in every interaction. It's okay to set a boundary with one person and not with another. It just might not feel right. And you don't have to beat yourself up for that. But if setting that boundary feels right, or letting them know that you're actually not feeling a lot of joy and that you're feeling anxious, I think that you should absolutely do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even think about, little things like barista at Starbucks, or, if you're going to the nail salon, and how to broach those conversations. I think, for me, I've kind of told all my friends and family, whenever I'm pregnant again, there will be little signs and you will know, but this is how I'm going to feel about it. I've already had those conversations. And so I also think that that's helpful too, for the people that you're closest with, just to say, that it's going to be, well, yes, I'm of course going to be grateful and happy and praying and hoping for the best. My given what happened last time does put me in a different position than most. And so, yeah, I think setting those boundaries is important. It can be a little intimidating, but this is about what's best for you and your baby during this time. And sometimes you just have to set those tough boundaries, even though it can be difficult. So I think that was great advice. And I guess, from that, the initial I'm pregnant again, and, balancing that joy with panic, how can we, if we need to build, and we should be building a support system around this time, how can we bring in our partner, who's also probably feeling just as panicky and nervous, balancing the joy just as much as we are, and our friends and family? So in addition to just telling them and saying that it's hard, is there anything that we can do to also bring them really in as support people?
Yeah, I think it's really important to let them know, communicate what you need from them.
Okay.
Because if left to their own devices, often even well-meaning family and friends might think that they're supporting us in ways that actually we don't really need, or aren't very helpful or supportive for us. So I really encourage you, to take some time to reflect on what exactly it is that you need. Whether that's just, someone to listen and not offer advice, someone to go to your appointments with you, whatever that looks like. Again, no rights or wrongs, but to let them know, because they're probably not aware of the best way to support you.
Yeah, the communication piece is huge. Um, I think another, just in talking with friends, that have had living children after loss, the closer you get to the date that your loss happened, the more anxiety riddled you are. The whole experience can certainly be possibly full of anxiety, but definitely when you get closer to the week in which your loss happened, it can be very heavy and very challenging. How do you think we can communicate with our providers? What can we be doing ourselves to keep that in check as much as possible? It's completely natural, I think, for someone to be extra nervous and heightened around that time. For me, it'll be around the 32-week mark, or kind of like the week before. I can already, see in my future, my anxiety levels just spiking. And so what can we do? Yeah, just kind of personally on our own. And then also, how can we communicate with our provider, OB, midwife, to kind of also help us through that? Or do you suggest just, speaking to a perinatal therapist during that time? Like, what would be the best balance?
Yeah, I think it's completely understandable that your anxiety is going to be increasing as that date draws closer. And sometimes people don't feel as much relief as they expect to feel when that date passes.
Okay.
That's very common as well. I definitely recommend, like I said earlier, making space for those feelings. Like, they're there for a reason, and it's okay to feel that, to sit with that, to acknowledge that, to talk about that with people in your life that you trust and who can support you. And then, at least with the folks I work with, I try to figure out something that they can kind of hold on to, whether that's like an affirmation, or for some people it's a prayer, but it's something kind of or it's just a thought, something kind of along those lines that helps sort of ground them. And it's pretty different for every person. Some things will work for one person and just not feel really right to another. But for example, one might be like, I can't control what's going to happen, but I'm doing everything I can.
Yeah.
Something that just kind of grounds them and recenters them. And I do definitely recommend speaking with a perinatal mental health provider because these emotions are so complex. And again, they do tend to heighten as that date draws closer. And some people experience relief after. Some people find that their anxiety is still pretty high. So I think finding that support, and whether it's like an organization like Push or support groups,
Yeah.
something where you're with people who get it,
Yep.
is super, super important.
Yeah. So, okay. So maybe, because I would imagine many think that, oh, we can just talk to our OB or midwife about it. But I'm thinking just based off of what you said, it might be better for us to seek out a perinatal mental health provider in addition to. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, generally I hear people have different experiences with
Right.
how supportive their OBs are or midwife or any kind of
Yeah.
provider. And sometimes you just don't have a lot of time with them. So
Yeah.
it might be a 5-minute appointment and it's just really not enough time to get into it, or it might not be kind of on their radar during every appointment. They might not check in about it.
Yeah.
So I definitely encourage people to verbalize that, to bring it up, to make sure that their providers are aware of how they're feeling. But if you feel like you're not getting enough support from your provider, a perinatal mental health provider is a wonderful resource.
And how can someone go about, researching perinatal mental health providers? What questions should be being asked, when we're looking for one? And also, I guess it's kind of, I just asked this, but when in the process? Should it be before someone's even trying to get pregnant again? Should it be as soon as you see that test? Or maybe after a first ultrasound? Is there a best time, or is it really just dependent on what the individual needs?
Yeah, I think the earlier the better, but whenever you're ready to take that step is the best time. We work with a lot of people who are prior to being pregnant, after loss, or during their pregnancies, and sometimes even postpartum they start. But it's never too early, it's never too late would be my
Okay,
answer.
helpful. So I feel like some people might say, "Oh, it's too early, I need to wait." And then if you wait a little bit, it's, "Oh, I'm feeling okay, I don't need help now." But it really truly can be whenever in the
Anytime is
journey.
fine. Yeah.
Oh, good.
And then to find a provider who's specifically works with this, the
Yes.
best way to do it is to look for a provider that has the letters PMHC after their title. That
Okay.
stands for Certified Perinatal Mental Health Provider.
So helpful.
That
Okay.
means that we have training, experience, we passed an exam, a lot of us have lived experience.
Okay.
So that's basically, we've done extra training on top of our mental health degree and being able to support families that are going through this.
Oh, that is so helpful to know. Thank you. Because I was actually wondering, well, and so wait, so what does the C mean then? So PMH, what's the C stand for?
I believe the C is for certified, but I don't know why the C comes after.
That is something I've been wondering and talking to a few people. So thank you for answering that, because that is a huge part. So please, when you're looking for a therapist, everyone make sure that in the title PMHC, that they have that, because yeah, I can imagine you can't just call up anyone, any mental health provider for something like this. We really need someone that is specialized and that truly gets it, whether that's with the lived experience or just enhanced education. So, is there anything else from your perspective as the provider, as someone that has worked with many families that have experienced anxiety during pregnancy after loss, anything that we didn't touch on that you think is important to share with our audience?
One thing that we kind of touched on earlier, but I just wanted to circle back to,
Please.
was when you were asking about how to communicate with friends and family.
Yeah.
One thing that I hear comes up a lot is that question of how many children do you have? And in
That's
that situation, you're faced with answering, do I
yeah.
speak to my lived children? Do I speak to all my children?
Bringing this up.
And you feel kind of torn between if you feel like if you don't share that you're not honoring all of your babies, and it's just such a moment where you feel in this emotional tug of war. And I just want to say that whatever answer you give in that situation is okay.
Yep.
Not every situation is going to warrant or you're going to feel comfortable getting into the details of what you went through. And not mentioning that is in no way not honoring your baby or takes
Yeah.
away from the love that you have for your baby. So I just want to put it out there that however you answer questions like that is completely okay. And it's still, you still, love your baby and you're honoring them, and you don't have to share your details with everybody if that doesn't feel right.
Yes. Thank you so much for saying that, because I feel like that goes for everyone that's experienced the loss. I even find myself when I'm asked that question, it really depends on who I'm talking to and, where I am, the context for how I answer it. And I will say the first few times that happened, I was so caught off guard. I didn't know what to say. And if I said none, then I felt awful later. But I've learned over the years that it really just depends on the situation, that no matter which answer I say, it's okay either way. So thank you so much for sharing that. Anything about Phoenix Health that you want our audience to know? Where we can find you on Instagram or just the website, how people can get in contact with you directly?
Yeah, we're an online mental health practice. We offer care in most states. We take insurance in a handful of those states, and are actively growing our insurance network. Our goal is really to make the perinatal mental health care accessible and affordable to all families. And you can find us at joinphoenixhealth.com, and our Instagram handle is also Join Phoenix Health, and we're always happy to help.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I feel like this is going to be the first of many conversations having you here. It's been just so grounding and reaffirming for someone who wants to start the journey, and I'm sure for others that have walked it or maybe walking it now, that the advice that you shared was just so helpful. So thank you for that. And I will just share with everyone that, especially for providers, Push has an amazing pregnancy after loss course, and we're running a summer special on it right now. So please get in contact with us if you want to take the course just for yourself, or if you have a group of providers. We would love to work with you to help get as many providers trained as possible. So don't hesitate to reach out about that. And now that I know it's Thursday, Friday Eve, I'm even happier as I go about my day. So happy Thursday to everyone. If you have any follow-up questions, do not hesitate to reach out. We will try to answer them the best that we can. And also, this conversation is just a discussion, right? I encourage you to definitely reach out to a provider if you feel like you need one. Feel free to reach out to us or to Emily to help start that process. But I hope that this gave people some great insight. And there's our summer special code, summer 25 for our training. And thank you all so much for joining, and we'll see you next time.